see, about 15 years ago, I sat down unassumingly in a talk like this. And that talk transformed my life. It was given by a woman called Professor Rotimi. She came from the USA. And she's a prostate cancer researcher. And you see, if you ask anybody about the risk of prostate cancer, and she's a prostate cancer confirmed, is number one, you must be a man to have a risk to develop that disease. So that made sense to me when I heard that. Number two is old age. That also made sense because, you see, our body is like a building made up of blocks. So the risk of a building coming down or collapsing is somehow a function of age. So that makes sense to me a little bit. But the third risk factor for prostate cancer is being black. That didn't make sense to me. In that, why should you say, for example, the color of the paint used on a building is a risk factor for it coming down? So it really just makes sense to me alone. It got me confused, got me concerned, it got me curious. And that changed the path of my career completely. So I set out on that journey to know, why do black men have higher risk of developing prostate cancer? And when they do develop it, why they have higher risk of dying from it? So that's part of what I will share with you on what I've heard, why elephants don't get cancer, and DNA play to save African lives. So you see, about 100 years ago, there were arguments, just as I just give you an example. And part of the argument was, did Africans have cancer? And this is one of the publications by a doctor practicing right here in Lagos between 1900 and 1923. And he wrote in his scientific report that he had looked out for cancer among indigenous Lagosians, the people living in this place that time called Lagos. And it was very rare, I couldn't even find an example. Around the same time, there were also reports from northern part of Nigeria. In fact, that paper was so clear, I gave an example that I looked into 9 million people, was only able to find one case of breast cancer. So what changed in 100 years? Definitely, to where we are now, where cancer is so common, and you look at the projection for the next 15 years, Africa is going to have the highest burden of cancer. And we're not even going beyond 50 years now. So what has changed within a short period of time? Definitely, it's not that we have changed in terms of our composition as people, but we seem to have misconstrued a fish out of water to a toad out of water. But you see, I'm a scientist. What we do is that we use model to understand pattern. So it turns out that if you look into the animal kingdom, we're not the only ones that develop cancer. All the animals develop cancer. And when you look at the pattern, rats, for example, followed by cat, followed by dog, followed by man, what you consistently see is that as the number of the body size, the number of cells which we consider as body size increases, the risk of developing cancer over time also increases. But then there is one animal that defies that odd, and that's the elephant. You see, elephants are so big compared to man that if we extend that projection, elephants shouldn't exist. But they exist. They live very well. Guess what? It's very rare to see cancer in elephants. So the question is, can we look into them and understand why? Well, it turned out that elephants have about 20 copies of a particular gene, more than what we have, and more than every other animals do. And that gene, we call it scientifically TP53. But it has a very interesting name. It's called the guardian angel of the genome. You see, what that gene does is that it goes through every block that makes up this building and always looks out for cracks in it. So think about that. Imagine that every day that you live in your house, you have an agent that looks into every block, and as soon as there is a crack, it calls the bricklayer, comes in, please come in and mend this thing. That's what that gene does for us. So elephants have 20 of that. And so even when one is 40, they have a very good chance of doing very well. So what can we learn from our own gene? What has changed about us? Well, isn't that what we realized that we really didn't know so much about our own composition? And my research started asking that question. What is it in us, in our DNA, that increases this risk, and then that we can take advantage of to conquer this common enemy? And today, I'm going to give you 3 points that are very easy for you to remember, I tell you. Number 1 is that you see that our building, just like this building, every now and then you have infestation of rodents, snakes can come in, sometimes it could be soldier ants. And when you allow them to stay, they break down the building eventually. And one of the ways by which you can keep them at bay is to use fire. So you put on the fire, you burn some naked fire, and these things run away, and then we're good to continue to live in that building. So our body uses that kind of mechanism, and we call it inflammation, from the same root word inflame, inflammatory statement, flame, fire. So typically our body has the ability to ignite a fire when there is a stranger in it. So when you have malaria, you increase your temperature increases, is to chase away that intruder. But that's the extreme end where you have fever. Inflammation occurs without fever internally. So it turns out that as long as you are able to control that fire and put it off while it chases out the enemy or the intruder, you'll be fine. What our research has shown is that Africans have a mechanism that rapidly ignites fire, and if you don't control and put it out on time, the fire continues to burn. One of those things is stress, and that's point number 2. In fact, around that same time in 1923, one of the doctors practicing in East Africa wrote a paper and said the reason why blacks were not having cancer is because they observed they didn't worry about anything. If I said the Negro does not worry, but we know the lifestyle has changed. We worry about everything. We stress ourselves about everything. The unfortunate thing about stress is that even when you think you have recovered, the body keeps the count. See stress as the petrol that keeps the fire burning. Each time that you engage in a stressful experience, it burns something up in your body. Number 3 thing that I want to talk about is our research then found out there's actually a natural mechanism to keep the fire off and make our body function very well. And that is the sun. You see, the sun is not just out there, it's designed for us. So before I continue to explain what the sun does, you see, there are 2 things that I've mentioned before I mention the sun: inflammation and stress. We find out that when you have these 2 things come together, they reduce the hormone that makes us feel happy. That is what we call serotonin. When serotonin is reduced, the hormone that makes us to sleep very well also reduces. That's melatonin. I'm a university professor, so I like to do assignments. So I say, bring out your phone, go to Google, and ask this question. Does reduced sleep increase the risk of cancer? You will see the answer that Google will give you. Now take it back to sun. The next question you should ask Google is, does sun exposure improve quality of sleep? What Google will tell you is yes. When you get exposed to sun very well, you sleep better. That's backed up by science. And when you sleep better, improve the quality of your overall health, and it reduces your cancer risk. So next thing as I begin to write up is that what there is also going on within our body that we don't know. So our group, and I do my research in groups, so research is done in groups. So we have a consortium called Prostate Cancer Transatlantic Consortium. And based on the work that we did, that I explained about, stress, inflammation, we got more funding to establish what we call I Care for Black Men. And what we started asking is, what do these things do? One of the things that we found out is that when you get exposed to sun and you have vitamin D is actually like a switch. It controls genes. But it doesn't control genes equally. It controls more genes in black people than it does in white people. We also found out when we do genetic sequencing that we have particular genes that are common in their pattern in us. The pattern that we have is very unique. And because of this unique pattern, we tend to have increased risk. But the good news is that there are now drugs that look for this pattern and treat this disease very well. So it's not all bad news. In fact, that part of it is very good news. So as I conclude, I want to leave you with three things, sort of to summarize the takeaway from this talk. So we need to awaken to fight this common enemy, which has actually been called the emperor of all maladies, because there's no disease that strikes fear in human being as much as cancer does. So think about it. You need to keep down that fire. Reduce your exposure to toxicants and eating of junk food. They inflame the body. Number two, you should relax. We are all here together for love. Nothing is going to happen. So let's calm down and reduce the stress. And I think importantly, think about the last time your body gets exposed to the sun. Can you just take one day out of the week and let the sun bake your body? That is how we are created. That's why we have dark skin. So it's not about the dark skin. It's about that we are taking the fish out of water. Thank you very much.